With the Minnesota Vikings sitting at 1-5 on the season and looking like that this season is going to be a lost cause for 2020, and a few other teams as well, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, Washington football team, just to name a few. It's good news that the Big Ten has returned to football action on this Saturday today. And like a lot of other people, I'm sure, I sat down and watched the Ohio State game so I could get a look at Justin Fields, who is likely to be the second quarterback drafted in the first round of the 2021 NFL draft. And if things continue the way that they do, it looks like Minnesota could be in a position to land Justin Fields as their next franchise quarterback in the draft if they do decide to go that route, which I believe a lot of fans are really hoping that they do. We want to get to the post-Kirk Cousins era as fast as humanly possible, and Justin Fields would be a really nice prize to the conclusion of the 2020 season that looks like it's headed for the basement and nowhere else. So I decided to sit down today, watch the Ohio State game, take a look at Justin Fields. So let's go ahead and talk about him together as a little player profile here, if you will. And in the future, we'll do other ones like Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Kyle Trask. The only guy, I've talked about a little bit has been Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think that the Minnesota Vikings are bad enough to be in a position where they're going to be able to, have the number one overall pick in order to draft Trevor Lawrence. I think the Jets and the Giants and maybe the Washington football team are way worse than what we are. The Vikings have a legitimate chance to stumble into about 4 or 5 wins this season, so let's be realistic. I think Trevor Lawrence for right now is out of the conversation. Justin Fields might be close to being out of the conversation, but there's still, I believe, a realistic opportunity that we lose enough games where we're going to find ourselves in a position to, if not outright draft Justin Fields at the position that he falls to us, trade up to get him because we wouldn't have to move up too many spots. So having said all of that, let's take a look at the career so far of Justin Fields, plus today, plus his worst, best games from 2019, and a few things I'm looking at going forward for the rest of the season. So Justin Fields is a junior quarterback, 6'3", 228 pounds. He's got a really nice arm, really nice velocity, really nice accuracy. He throws a really nice ball. A couple of the balls he threw today to his wide receivers, the one to Chris Olave didn't come down with it in the end zone because he got wrecked by the defender, but it was just really on point, nice jump ball. Reminiscent to how, the passes used to look in Minnesota back in the day when we were throwing jump balls in the end zone to Randy Moss. I really like Justin Fields as a thrower more than I do like him as a runner, but at the same time, that running ability is very nice. Going from Kirk Cousins to Justin Fields is like night and day because Kirk Cousins is statuesque, really no pocket awareness whatsoever, and his rushing ability is absent. He doesn't have much to speak of. That's not his game. He's not a running quarterback. He's not really that much of a mobile quarterback. They do a lot of play action rollouts, but he doesn't use his legs to buy time or to make it up on the fly. Justin Fields would be a huge upgrade in all of those departments, in my opinion. It's one of those things you look at. You've been stuck with Kirk Cousins for a number of years. He's very statuesque. He just doesn't get out of the pocket, succumbs to a lot of pressure. Yes, the offensive line is bad. Yes, the offensive line at Ohio State is really good. Wouldn't mind getting Wyatt Davis in the first round this year if we're not in the range to get a quarterback. But at the same time, I think Justin Fields can elevate the talent around him and make the offensive line look better than it is, talking about Minnesota, than Kirk Cousins ever could in his 9-year career. So for the 2018 season, Justin Fields was in Georgia. He only played in 12 games, wasn't the starter. Obviously, that job belonged to Jake Fromm. 27 for 39, 69% completion percentage. Nice. 328 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. Then he transfers to Ohio State, who's looking for a new starting quarterback. 2019 for Ohio State, he starts 14 games, 238 completions on 354 attempts. That's good for number 2 in completions and number 4 in attempts for the Big Ten Conference. 67% completion percentage, 3,273 yards passing. That is number 1 in the Big Ten for that year. 41 touchdowns passing. That is also number 1 in the Big Ten for that year. He also added on 10 rushing touchdowns last season in what was a huge Heisman campaign. He finished 3rd in Heisman voting for the 2019 season. Today versus Nebraska, pretty solid game. The defense kind of gave him a lot of short fields and did a lot of scoring for him, so he wasn't asked to do all that much. Still went 20 for 21, 276 yards, and 3 total touchdowns, 2 in the air, 1 on the ground. It's been a pretty good start to the weekend for Big Ten quarterbacks. You had the Wisconsin new guy, who's Graham Mertz, almost nearly a perfect game with 4 touchdowns of his own. And then Justin Fields goes nearly perfect on his passing attempt. So not a bad start to Big Ten football. I'm really excited for the season. So taking a look at last year, it's always good and fun and wonderful to talk about all the good things and all the shiny stuff and the big time stats, but you do got to look at some of the bad stuff. Now, going through Justin Fields' career, which is short, small sample size, not very many games. Last year at Ohio State, it's kind of hard to swim through and find a bad game, if you will. So you kind of have to look for the worst statistics of the group. So, and one of the ones I landed on was Week 8 against Wisconsin, where he was 12 for 22, 167 yards, which I believe was his lowest passing total. Still scored 2 touchdowns, still won the game 38-7, largely due to J.K. Dobbins existing and basically putting up big-time numbers from the running back position. It was also one of his worst completion percentage days at 54%. Other bad game, of course, was the playoff loss to Clemson, 30 for 46, 320 yards. That all sounds pretty good, but it was his only game of the year where he threw 2 interceptions, only threw 3 on the season, and 2 of them came against one team. Now, Clemson is a really, really good football program. They're likely headed back to the college football playoffs and the championship game itself, so it's really hard to knock him for either of these 2 performances where he isn't asked to do too much against Wisconsin because of J.K. Dobbins, and then the playoff game is just going up against the best of the best in the college football landscape. So I'm willing to give him somewhat of a pass for both of those. We haven't seen any complete meltdown performances or any super, questionable performances, and that is good. Hopefully that keeps up this year, and his draft stock isn't affected negatively. Best games from 2019, I had to pick Michigan, Week 12, 14 of 25, 302 yards, 4 touchdowns. They win the game 56-27. 56% completion percentage is not good, but at the same time, 4 touchdowns, all the yardage, that's really good. The completion percentage averages out for the end of the year with 67 total, so it's just one of those bumps in the road in terms of that statistic. Other great game, Week 2 versus Cincinnati, lesser competition, yes, but at the same time, got to give credit where credit is due. 20 for 25, 224 yards, 3 total touchdowns, 80% completion percentage, his best of the season. They win that game 42-0. It's a blowout. Looking ahead to 2020 for the rest of the season, the 2 big questions that I have, you can barely see them over my shoulder here. 2 big questions. Number 1, no J.K. Dobbins this season. Having watched the whole game today with Master T and the rest of the current stable of running backs that they have at Ohio State, the running game is looking questionable. We got to give credit to Nebraska's front 7 for being prepared for that. Also, Justin Fields was the leading rusher today. I'm sure that is something that Ryan Day doesn't want to happen going forward. But that just shows his Cam Newton aspect of his game. And that's a player comp that I've heard a lot, especially from the Draft Network, that Cam Newton is a pro player comp for Justin Fields right now. We can agree to disagree on player comps. I don't like making them, but that's just something I'm throwing out there. Big question number 2, Ohio State's quarterback history. Vikings fans and other fans of teams that have bad players or, bad records at this point looking for quarterbacks. Do you trust Ohio State to give you a quarterback of the future, a franchise quarterback from the Ohio State University? History is not good for this. We had Troy Smith, the Heisman winner, who did nothing in the NFL. Braxton Miller, Terrell Pryor, there's some that I'm forgetting, JT Barrett, and currently Dwayne Haskins, who has been benched and has had a lot of negative press since he's been benched with, I think those are probably more internal leaks trying to make him look bad, but it is what it is. So do you trust taking a quarterback from Ohio State, a university that has not really provided the NFL with any franchise quarterbacks, even though Justin Fields looks like he does fit the part? So that is the question that I pose to you, the fans. Let me know in the comments below what you think. In the future, we'll talk about Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Kyle Trask, and any other quarterback that I can think of that might make the Minnesota Vikings better and more easily forget the Kirk Cousins era in Minnesota. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.